kids need new tools to navigate the changes they face in the world. Can anyone relate? In this podcast, you'll hear from parents, educators, and other experts who will bring perspective to the monumental job of parenting. We can't count on anyone else. We have to be warriors for our own kids. This is the Warrior Parent Podcast. I'm Marci Mitchell.
And I'm Debbie DiManno. As parents, we understand that we are partners with schools and other leaders in the communities. And we want you to join us as we use the science of educational process known as SEL, or social emotional learning, as well as other proven mind-body techniques to create a collection of exercises and tools for kids of all ages.
In this inaugural episode, we'll tell you how we got here, how we discovered the tools, and how you can use them in your family. We'll also talk with Donna Apidone, who produces the meditation recordings on our website.
So first, Marci, let's give everyone a little bit of a background on Cour Experience and how we got here.
So what I think of as the beginning is when we were in a class together, you and I and 5 other women. And it was based on Brene Brown's book, Rising Strong, phenomenal book. Highly recommend everyone grab that and read it. And so we did this class or book study, and when it finished, we just didn't want to stop meeting. We had such a good connection with the group, and we just felt like there was a great energy going. So for a while, we would just keep meeting, and we would have some wine and cheese and just talk and connect. And then eventually we started talking about why are we here? What's our purpose? Let's do something. Let's do some good in the world.
Yeah. Because in the Rising Strong, right, we learned about, owning our story, walking into our story, and then rewriting it, right? And that's why we decided we had to come up with this purposeful work.
Yeah, there's something about hitting middle age for women where we get real serious about why are we here and what are we doing? And that's, I think, where all of us were. So we started talking about what should we do? What is our purpose? How can we get started? And what is it that we want to do? And helping kids with mental wellness just came up over and over again as something that we were called to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we had this powerful group of women, right? We all had diverse backgrounds, some in computer science, and I had been in medicine, and you had been in the Army, and we had someone in finance. And so it was a very interesting group. And I think we could all feel each other's power. Like if we just put all of these women together, imagine the difference that we could make in the world.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And the other thing about that was that we all had been in various teachings that use these tools, all kinds of different tools to help calm and recenter when you were in those moments of anxiety or stress or overwhelm. And so we had the idea, okay, our kids are stressed, they're overwhelmed, they're anxious, we want to help them. And we know how to do that. We have tools, we have things that we know could really help them, but I don't think they're learning these things. And so that was where Cour Experience was born. Cour being the French word for heart, and experience being this idea of a heart-based experience that could help bring you back to center. And then that we could teach those to kids and teens.
I remember we kept talking about my kids' experience at a local summer camp that they would have, and how they were transformed during that week. They had no phones. They were completely connected with each other on just this soul level with music and art and all the beautiful things that happen, at camp. And, we just thought we somehow want to recreate that. Right. And it wasn't necessarily in a summer camp. It was like, this is how we want those kids to live their lives. And we knew how hard it was for them coming out of the camp and exposing themselves back into the
Mm.
world. They would say, can we just stay at your house for a couple extra nights until we're ready to go out in the world again? So
Yeah.
that was the experiential piece, and I think that's become more and more important as the days go on, right?
Yeah. And there's something about that idea that this camp where they're connected to the earth, connected to each other, not on their phone, really engaging, that's the fake world, and then they have to come back to the real world, and what's wrong with that picture? And so much of that is what's causing all of this stress and anxiety. And so thinking of trying to recreate the camp environment, we had this idea to do these 2-day workshops that we would bring these teens in, and we would teach them all these tools, which we call toolkits for life. We've since kind of started using the term core tools, but tools that they would have with them always, that they don't need anything. It's in them, something they know and that they go to when things get crazy, get rough, when they feel stressed, when they've got a test, when they've had a fight with a boyfriend or the parents or whatever, and they are in that reaction phase where their brain is taken over and their nervous system is going crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is your favorite core tool moment?
Oh boy. So I have lots of them. I mean, I'm telling you this again, but people who are listening don't know this about me, but I had a very difficult childhood, lots of trauma. And I didn't even know that that was a situation until I became older, and I was in my first divorce and I was in therapy when I first discovered a lot of the difficulty that I had grown up in. And so I started having some health issues in my 20s. I was a college athlete, played 3 sports, and I started having issues. Like I got super sick. No one could really figure out what was going on. They just thought it was the college mono thing. And then as I progressively got older, I had a couple of kids. I'm working very high stress job. And when I was in my 30s, my body started to severely shut down. And I just couldn't figure it out. I went from doctor to doctor to doctor to doctor to doctor,
Mm.
and I had several different diagnoses. I went to the Mayo Clinic. I was everywhere, and no one could really figure out what was wrong with me. They thought I had Epstein-Barr, I had chronic fatigue, I had Lyme disease, I had all these things, but I was bedridden, I was in a wheelchair, and they didn't think I'd walk again.
And how old were you at that time?
I was about 40. So my daughter was just 2 years old. So it was a it was a super difficult time.
Mhm.
So I, at that point, realized like I'd been in the medical space. And so I was looking outward for somebody to fix me. Right. And that was the world I lived in. And then I realized that I needed to start looking inward and trying to figure out how maybe I could take some ownership of all the crazy things that were going on in my life. First was just to get rid of some stress and that sort of thing, but then it materialized into meditation and to yoga and, lots of other things. I had a lot of help on the way. But ultimately, I think the time, so I was beginning to heal myself, but there was a moment when my husband brought a book home that someone had recommended to him, and it was called The Childhood Disrupted. And that's when everything changed. So
Mm.
there's something called the ACE test, right? And the ACE is adverse childhood experience. And with that test, there's 10 simple questions. Anyone could take it. And at that moment, I realized all those disruptions in my childhood had been taking a toll on my health. And that if I didn't start to rewire my brain, and to do some serious work around that using all of these tools, that I wasn't going to last long. And that's when everything changed for me.
That's amazing.
So how about you, Marci? What's your core tool moment?
Yeah. So for me, I did not have well, I mean, I had some trauma in my childhood, but my trauma came much later, in the 2008, 2009 financial downturn, where my husband and our family, with our two young children, were living in Arizona, which was hit particularly hard. We ended up, my husband was laid off. And I had been a stay-at-home mom. I started trying to get a job and could not. Everybody we knew was affected. And so we got into this very frightening financial place where no money was coming in. Um, we thought we were going to lose our home. There was no hope. We weren't seeing anything that, was going to save us. And
That that was happening for a lot of people,
a
by the
lot
way.
of
In
people.
2008, 2009, people
Yeah.
were homeless, right?
Yeah,
So,
and we
yeah.
were fortunate because we did have a 401k, which we completely lived off I mean, this went on for a year and a half, which is crazy. We finally moved back to Virginia where we'd been before. And it was very interesting because in Virginia, was a total different situation. They kind of were like, what recession? And so we both got jobs and we got back on our feet and everything was okay. But there was a manifestation, this weird thing that was happening to me that had happened during the time, but then continued on. And it was 2011. And so it was a couple of years later, and I noticed it was still happening. I had no idea what it was. And that was um, that when we would start to run out of dog food, I would, as soon as I noticed, so we had our dog food in this opaque bin, plastic bin that you would open the door, and we had two dogs. So twice a day, morning and night, I would open that up to feed the dogs. And during the time that we were unemployed, I started to have this very physical clenching in my gut, stomach. I
Like
felt sick.
a full visceral reaction,
Yeah, like,
right?
oh my God. When the dog food would go down, I'd have this thought, okay, how can I buy dog food? I need to feed my children. We need to keep our house. We need to live. I can't buy dog food. That's frivolous. And of course, I did continue to buy dog food and feed my dogs twice a day. I love my dogs. But I had that reaction every time it would start to go down. And the weird thing was that after we'd moved back to Virginia and we were back on our feet and everything was okay, and buying dog food was certainly not a challenge to us, I was still having that reaction every time we started to run out of dog food. And I just was like, this is so weird because I mean, it was very physical. I mentioned I was in a class in 2011. I mentioned that we were talking about how things get stuck in the body, how a trauma or a strong situation can get stuck and keep triggering you. And I said, oh, that happens to me. And I explained what happened. And someone in the group said, oh, we need to tap on that. And I had no idea what they were talking about. I was like, what? We need to what?
And
Tap
just
on what?
tap that out. We're gonna tap that
Yeah,
out.
so there were two
Yeah.
people in the class who were familiar with EFT, emotional freedom technique, or this tapping skill, which is one of the skills we teach in our core tools. And they said, "Are you open to doing it?" And I said, "Sure, absolutely." So one of them led us through this tapping session, took about 10 minutes. Everybody in the class participated. We all spoke it aloud. And so we were tapping wherever they told us to tap, and we were repeating these phrases. I had no idea what was going on. And afterwards, we all took a deep breath and let it out. And she said, "Okay, how do you feel?" And I said, "Well, I feel fine, but I'm normally fine. It's only when I run out of dog's food that I don't feel so great."
And meanwhile,
So
you're feeling kind of silly, like, okay, yeah, like I'm sure
yeah,
this is working, right?
I was open because
Yes.
again, you hit that point, and by then I was in my 40s, I guess. I wasn't 50 yet, but I was in my 40s and I was way more open. So I was like, yeah, I'll try it. And man, I had faith in these women. These women were people I knew and I trusted. So went in with an open heart. And so I mean, what do you think happened the next time we started to run out of dog food? Um, Absolutely nothing. It was completely healed, one and done. And I let that dog food run down to like two pieces sitting on the bottom of the container just to make sure, completely gone. And that's, 12 years ago, has never come back. That is it completely healed in one session. And so I was like, oh, what is this EFT tapping thing? What is this about? And let me find out more. And so, yeah.
That is a straight up miracle, or so it seems, right? But
It did, because something that was happening so regularly. I
yeah.
mean, once a month, because we bought those giant bags of dog food, so it'd last a while, but still, once a month, without fail, I was having that
Yeah.
experience. So,
Yeah, I think, what we both probably experienced in different situations is just that empowerment, right? Like I have some control over this. Like, okay, here it comes, but oh, I have this tool, right? I have this thing I can do and I can go back to. And I think, yeah, for both of us feeling like, wow, what if every kid had this little tool, right? What if every
yeah,
parent had this tool? How, what an amazing thing that would be. So here
absolutely.
we are. All right, Marcy. So I guess everybody knows now how we use the core tools and why we're doing this, but um, you know, we're doing this for parents and families. So let's maybe share, or if you could share how your family uses your tools.
Yeah, absolutely. So, sometimes, often, I think we have missed opportunities where I think, God, we should have done the tool, but I feel like I'm getting better at it. And that's just one of those things. You learn something and then you just have to keep reminding yourself. But both of my kids, I have two sons, both of them have dealt with depression, anxiety. They're adults. They continue to deal with it. Um, and so recently, my younger son had surgery and we were in pre-op getting ready, and he was starting to get nervous. And so I reminded him, he's been through some of the trainings, and I reminded him, let's do some bilateral tapping, which is another one of our tools. And just involves, he's laying on this gurney, he's got, his IV in and stuff. But you can just take the hands and put them across on the chest and just tap back and forth. And this has a very calming effect. And
Mhm.
so we did this together in pre-op to help him just stay a little calmer, deep breaths, letting things go. And so that was something that was very handy at the moment. I could see a shift with him. And then another thing that he does regularly, he's still living at home with us, is he goes out in the backyard and does some grounding, takes his shoes off, puts them in the grass or on the sand or just somewhere flat on the earth, and feels that connection with the earth.
The grounding that you put in your backyard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're in Northern California. We have a desert-like climate. So I say grass for the spring. We have what we call grass. It's really weeds, and we trim it, and then it's not really grass. It's not healthy. It's not really great with a drought to have proper grass. So we don't do that. But so there weren't great places to put your feet the rest of the year that were nice and soft. So I had a strange little, I can see it. I'm looking out my back door right now. It's a strange little triangle in between a walkway and a deck that we built. And it just was small. It's like maybe I don't know, it's probably 15 feet long and then maybe 5 feet wide at the widest. And it's a triangle. And so I ended up buying 20 bags of playground sand and bringing that in, putting some weed barrier down, and just dumping the sand and creating a little beach in my backyard, because I am originally from Southern California. I'm used to living close to the beach. And it became my favorite place to ground because I love my feet in the sand. And so when the weather's cooperating, that's where my feet are every morning. I have my coffee out there. I got a little beach chair, stick my feet in the sand, and it's just incredibly calming. So
Yeah.
how about you? How does your family use the tools, and which ones?
Oh boy. So, have a blended family. So we have 4 kids, and I feel like I'm using it with one or many of them all at the same time. In fact, last night, one of my sons said to me, "I feel like I need to be paying you for all of this, for all of this training." And I'm like, "I'm your mother. Like, of course we're doing this." So anyway, it's sort of funny, but he's
Great.
grateful. But anyway, probably the biggest one was with my daughter. She was in a car accident when she was in middle school. It was some teenagers who shouldn't have been driving, and she ended up in the ditch, and it was a very traumatic thing for her. And she was a full-blown 3-sport athlete at the time. And when we found out about the accident, we took her to the emergency room, and she just wasn't recovering. We thought that she had a concussion. And but she just couldn't get out of bed. And if she did get out of bed, she was just passing out and falling down. She fell down the stairs more than once. So meanwhile, we're like, what in the world is going on? And so again, doctor after doctor after doctor after doctor, we took her to and MRIs and the works, and ultimately she came up with the diagnosis of POTS syndrome, so postural orthostatic tachycardic syndrome. So in that scenario, your autonomic nervous system gets turned on, the switch gets turned on, and that's what controls your heart rate, your breathing, all those things. And so suddenly she's in fight or flight 24/7. Her resting heart rate's like 170 beats a minute, and she can't even sit up. So anyway, we finally got some help for her. We took her to a specialty clinic in Dallas, Texas, where astronauts go to have heart math training. Believe it or not, astronauts, when they come back to Earth, their hearts are disconnected from their brains because the difference in the gravity field. So they have to do this training. So anyway, I was determined I wasn't going to put her on a bunch of meds, and we started this training. And lo and behold, we were there for 2 weeks, and it got a lot worse before it got better. And we were super, super scared while she was there. But she has continued to improve. She uses the tools, every day, still a lot less, but she knows certain things will trigger her and she can go there, and she just gets herself into a heart-brain coherence state. And now I use it. My nephew was out here. He was having problems with anxiety and he's used it. It's an easy thing to do, right? I think it's just, it sounds like a big thing, heart math or heart brain coherence,
Right.
but it's really a simple thing to do, and that's one of my favorites.
You know what I thought of as you were saying that is, your daughter's going through this and you're scared and you're doing whatever it takes. And that's the warrior parent and that's who we are. That's what we do. We do whatever it takes to help our kids. For me, it was moving across country from Virginia back to California to help my son when he was having this really strong trauma. So
Yeah.
that's what that's about. And then that other piece is exactly why we do this, is to give these kids, give anybody. We sometimes joke, we say it's for kids from 4 to 104. The point is anyone can use these tools. Everybody needs these tools, whether you need them every day or whether you just need them every once in a while. But wouldn't you love to not get completely pulled out of your center into crazy land where you're just freaking out, overthinking, stressing yourself, your heart is racing or whatever, however it's manifesting your body. Maybe we find another way. And so that's the great thing about these tools and teaching them to kids. So
Yeah.
so I have another question for you. So we've talked a little bit about how we started and going through to the workshops, but how did we end up here? How did we end up doing a podcast?
Poor Marci. She's like, I'm not doing it. But anyway, so we're here to do this. And Marci talked a little bit about warrior parents. And we're not calling it warrior parents because we think we're like the best parents on the planet or something like that. But what we do know is that we're not going to give up on our kids. And we know that this audience doesn't give up on their kids either. It is just a very, very difficult time to be a parent and to be a kid right now. There's a lot going on, things that, when our kids were little, we never experienced. But so the reason we're doing this is, I'm the goal girl. I'm a 3 on the Enneagram. And so we were not achieving our goal. And our goal was, we started with the workshops, then we had to pivot during the pandemic. We took the tools and we put them on a platform. Marci has created this beautiful platform with all these beautiful tools. And then I was doing my thing. I was out there trying to get into the schools and break down barriers. And this is who we are. And we're attending everything we can. And I just thought, man, there's got to be a better way, because the goal ultimately was to change communities one one person at a time, right?
Mhm.
And so how were we going to be able to do that easily? A podcast. My daughter's in journalism school, and she was doing some podcasting, and it sort of it appealed to me. And I thought, now that is a platform where people have a choice about who they want to listen to.
Mhm.
And not only did we want to have these conversations with each other, but also bring all these beautiful people that we've met along the way, all the experts in all of these different areas, and and bring up the issues, but then also to give you a tool, something to use in the podcast, and learn a technique or two. So here we are, Warrior
Yeah.
Parent Podcast.
Here we are. And yeah, I might have had a little resistance in the beginning, but I'm glad we're here now. And yeah, the other thing that Debbie touched on was this, just what is going on in the world right now. And I think we all feel it. I hear it from people every day, not just small things, but big things that they're going through, that their family's going through, that their kids are going through. We see this very troubling rise in suicidal ideation and in attempts and completions, not just with our kids, although it's particularly bad with our kids, but also with adults, with adult males. There's a bit of an epidemic there as well. So
I don't know if everyone knows this, but every 11 minutes in the United States, there is a suicide. So in the time while we're doing this podcast, imagine how many human beings will have taken their lives.
my God, that is just heartbreaking. Such a heartbreaking statistic. That for people to be getting to that level of a loss of hope and desperation, that's where they're going, is just heartbreaking, especially, and for kids, they're getting younger and younger.
Yeah.
And so we know this is going on. We know our kids are watching our politics, our governance in this country go completely crazy. We have more and more kids identifying as LGBTQIA, gender non-binary, transgender, and the reaction to that by the leaders, by their parents, is more and more discriminatory bills taking away their rights, telling them that they can't be who they are. That is heartbreaking. And that's something that they are dealing with. The screens, even 10 years ago, we had phones, but it wasn't like it is today. And I think we all relate to that, that, and social media, we use it, and there's benefit here and there, but I think we all know that the algorithms and the ways that they are pulling us in, pulling kids in, telling them they're not good enough, they're not pretty enough, they're not thin enough, they don't have a thigh gap or some other nonsense. It's so unhealthy. It's so unhealthy. And so they're just dealing with so much, and they're just different. They're not interested in the way it used to be or the way it's always been, which is fantastic, because the old systems aren't working.
Yeah.
I
I want to make mention of the school shootings, right? And I was traveling. I was in Hawaii this past week, and there was a couple traveling with us. Beautiful couple, live sort of, in a rural area, and they have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. And the mother broke down into tears. I was telling her a little bit about what we do, and she was very vulnerable and honest, and shared with me that there's been more than one day when she's gone to drop her child off and had that thought, is this the last time I'm going to see my child? And I just burst into tears, and I thought, oh my God, like, is this really what parents are thinking every day when they drop their kids off at school, right? Like, you and I, our kids are older now, and I that thought never occurred to me. I always thought when my kids got to school, that was the safest place on planet Earth.
Right.
The safest place, right?
Yeah.
And then I had another woman, same thing, kindergarten, getting ready to go to school. She went and toured the school, and the first building on the school grounds was a kindergarten room. And she thought to herself, oh my God, if someone comes to shoot up the school, this is going to be the first building they go to. And she thought, I don't know, maybe this is not the right school. I mean, it is unfathomable what these poor parents, warrior parents, are
Yeah.
having to go through right now. And, you know, I mean, you and I can go on and on and on and on and on
Yeah.
because there's a million things that are going on right now. And I think what's interesting for you and I is that we've sort of understood what was going on with the young kids, the Gen Zs primarily.
Yeah.
And we started creating these tools and doing these workshops a long time ago. We're 5 years into it, and things have only gotten worse.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And, you talk about the parents and how they're reacting to this fear, which is very real. It's, if anybody believes we are not traumatizing our children with all of these drills and all of these stories that they're seeing, sorry, think again. My adult child he's in college, and it's a fear for him all the time. Are they going to come with guns? Are they, I'm always looking for a way. Where could I hide? What am I wearing? Can I move quickly? This is not how it should be. I think we all know that. But boy, we're doing some damage.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's why we're here, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're just,
That's
we're
right.
not going to give up. So hang in there
Yeah.
with us, right, everybody? And, our hope and dream really for all of this is that we're going to create a community of parents
Yeah.
that are all thinking these things, but feel isolated.
Yeah.
The mom said to me, I feel like I'm the only mom that's going crazy right now. Right. And the more and more we've talked to all these other parents, and the more people that we're going to have discussions doing this every week, they're telling us the same story. Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
we, we're here to do this difficult stuff and to talk about these very, very, very difficult things that are going on the planet right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And create some community around it.
Yeah.
The place where we can talk about these things.
Yeah. Should we talk about the tools a little bit? I mean, a little more specific. We talked about a couple of them already, but
Yeah.
so some of my favorites, and I talked about this also, but meditation
Mhm.
was my first love, right? And people had this idea about meditation. You need to be in a quiet
Yeah.
place.
Right. Floating above your
Yes.
chair or whatever.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Full on an hour every day or something. I mean, I do meditation every morning. I walk in nature and take my dog out. And that is my meditation. Now I do more in the evening. I get in the bathtub every night and do my own meditation too. But and then I find myself doing it all day long. If I get myself in the middle seat in an airplane, I can be found doing meditation there too. Right. That's where I do some of my best work. So that's a big one for me. And then yoga. I just got certified my 200-hour yoga teacher trainer this year, and social emotional learning, and as well as trauma informed training. So I'm super excited about the yoga piece. Again, everyone has this idea that you need to have your Lululemons on and get into all the poses.
Yeah.
But, we're teaching yoga in a way that you can do it in a chair, and
Yeah.
any kid can do it. 4 to 104 can do chair yoga. Right.
Yeah.
So
And we know most of us are living in a yoga pants these days anyway. So why not?
yes, that's right. That's right. Just stretch a little. Right.
Yes.
And then the other one is bilateral tapping, which you talked about a little bit. Yeah. And
Yep.
we were having fun with this one at a workshop we did last weekend. We're talking about the vagus nerve and how the tapping can help people calm, and just giving someone a hug is a form of bilateral tapping, right? Because you're putting pressure on those vagus nerves. So there's so much around each of these, and you and I are passionate about all of them. But what are your favorites?
Well, I love grounding. And it's something that I discovered a little bit later. I had a class a few years ago and was like, oh my God, this is fantastic. All the benefits of that connection with the earth. We spend almost all of our days in shoes that have a rubber bottom, and that keeps that electrical connection from happening. And so there are studies that show that connection, that transfer of ions from the ground to our bodies through our feet, can have benefits for our immune system, can help with sleeping, can calm us. And I just think everybody knows that it feels good to get your bare feet onto the ground and to be in nature that way. So that's one of my favorites that I try to do it almost every day when the weather's cooperating. Some of my sand washed away this year because we had something called what was it called? It was a
El Nino year?
No, it was a atmospheric river.
Oh,
If you're in
yes.
California, you might have had an
Multiple.
atmospheric river, which is
Yeah.
exactly what it sounds like. There was a river coming down, washing sand away, but I will get more.
Yes.
Journaling's another one that's so good to just write out whatever's going on. Write it out. Could be writing a letter to someone that you never send, could be just writing about your day, but also scientifically proven to help calm and help you process the stuff. So if you don't process the trauma, you're going to be 3 years later opening the dog food and having an experience with it. But if you process it, you can let it go. And
Or
so,
in the emergency room, like me, right?
yes,
You
or
just
in the
keep
emergency
stuffing it
room,
all down, stuffing it
right?
all
Because
down.
guys, it
Yes.
doesn't get better. It just
Yeah.
keeps building and building. And the body, the brain, you've heard the body keeps score. The body is definitely keeping score. So journaling is a great way to process things. If you have, whether it's, an unpleasant interaction with your mother-in-law or a family member or a friend, or, something maybe bigger, but writing about it helps to just let it move on. Let it move
Yeah.
on. We got to look at this stuff. We got to deal with it, but we don't have to get in there and live there and stay forever. We can
Let it go.
let it go.
Let it go.
Doodling is another great one. And
Yeah.
I was a doodler all my life. I still am a doodler. Whenever I'm taking notes, you're going to see some little pictures off on the sides. Shoes. I like drawing shoes for some reason, or hands or hair or whatever, different squiggly lines. Definitely not only can be calming, but it can help with your focus. So when kids are taking notes and doodling, they're actually ingraining what they're learning. So that's fantastic. How about you?
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
we talked about it already, but I know you got one
Yeah.
that you love.
Yeah. So heart brain coherence, again, sounds like some big thing, but they're really, there really is a connection between your heart and brain. There's 40,000 neurites that live in your heart. I don't know if you know this about me. I was an echocardiographer, right? So I studied the heart, I studied the
Yeah.
physics, and I taught physics of the heart to med students. So
She's the
that's why
sciencey one in this group.
so
I am not the sciencey
yes.
one. But
I
when
love
she
my
tells me to
science.
do something, then I do it because I know it's well researched and she knows what she's talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. So that one's near and dear to my heart.
And I talked to you also about EFT, emotional freedom technique. It uses the same points that you would use for acupressure or acupuncture, but there's no needles. It's just tapping, but it's this energy highway of meridians in your body, tapping on it and speaking these very simple statements that relate to the issue. Honestly, they do not even know why it works, but it clearly works. Like you will share some numbers in some upcoming episodes and you will see these things work. They work for things like PTSD, depression, anxiety, all the big things that are kind of really affecting our lives and keeping us from living our best, most calm and peaceful self.
Yeah. All right. So you now know a lot about Debbie and Marci, and we are excited about this Warrior Parent podcast. And we talked a little bit about our goal and our vision. And our vision is to imagine really a world where our kids and parents can feel empowered to live a better life, to live a healthy life. And for me personally, I feel like from what I went through with my childhood, if I could teach this stuff to kids when they're young, even
Yeah.
if they are having some trauma, that they will not go what I went through in my later years, and they will not have the health issues and the relationship issues and all of the issues, that have surrounded and made for a difficult life for myself.
Yeah.
So
And that's one of the reasons that we want to get this into the schools. That's still part of our vision. It's still part of our dream that we will have this in schools, starting with preschool, and start teaching these kids things as simple as what we call the butterfly tapping, where you just make a butterfly and tap back and forth. And, that can help to calm them. Take a breath, whatever it is when you're stressing. The whole point is to empower kids, adults, families, everyone to have a go-to that you go to that helps you to not go to the place you don't want to go to, the place of disruption and shortness of breath and upset stomach and all of the ways that our bodies get out of sync from what the way we should be operating.
yeah. All right.
There's something else that I would like to share that I really hope for this podcast is that, and Debbie already talked about it a little bit, we really want to create a community. And so we would love for you to be reaching out with your questions. I think we're going to set up a phone line at some point so people can call in, ask questions, ask specifically about the tools, whatever. We intend to have some really great experts on, from counselors to therapists to teachers to leaders in social movements, people who are working with people who are disabled, people who are working with the LGBTQIA community. Lots of people to come in, help us understand what kids are going through, help us be empowered to help them through it and help ourselves as well. And just we just want to make the world a better place. We want to by starting with families, starting with kids and their parents and their grandparents and their caregivers and whatever your family looks like. Let's bring some peace. Let's bring some connection there. So during the pandemic, we took all the tools that we were teaching at our 2-day in-person workshops and we digitized them, creating a Cour Experience platform that could bring the tools to people wherever they are. The platform, which is called Core Tools, consists of a number of proven tools and techniques that are designed to empower kids and their families to self-regulate and bring themselves back to a place of calm and peace in spite of what's going on in their world. Just one of these powerful tools is meditation. And through a special partnership with Donna Apidone, we have created a very special group of meditations available only on our platform and via Donna's own website. So before we talk with the voice of these recordings, let's hear a sample.
We carry it with us. All of it. Every bit of our lives, plus the bits we pick up from other people. We ignore, we dismiss, we override, but it's all still there. Until we release.
Donna Apidone is the person behind these beautiful core tool meditations. Donna, welcome. Tell us the concept for these motivators.
Well, I feel like purpose is my purpose. I teach a course on purpose, and I wanted to make sure that I was able to provide some what I call brief, vibrant motivators to keep people focused on their purpose. So the length of these is rather short. There's upbeat music, and it's a way to start the day with a positive message in our heads that will take us through the day.
Absolutely. I love starting my day with meditation. So it sounds like you know what kids are going through.
Well, I remember what it was like to be a kid. I remember being in my adolescent and teen years and just dreading going out the front door every morning. I remember that so distinctly. But the other thing that I remember was that my dad always was a person who would send me out the door in the morning with a very positive message. And his positive message on a lot of days was, remember, you can do anything you set your mind to do. And so I took that with me, and I've taken that with me throughout my life. So it's not so much that I know what individual kids are going through, but I know what a lot of kids go through.
Yes.
I love that story. I love that story about your dad. I'm gonna remember that one. So how did you decide that meditations were part of your purpose?
Several things converged at the same time. I teach a class about finding purpose. During the beginning of the pandemic, somebody in a congregation in our region asked me to record some meditations that they could play online since their congregation wasn't meeting in person. And at the same time, I met the two of you. And I realized how important it would be for people who are going through anxiety, who have experienced trauma of any kind, how important it would be for them to focus on purpose and remember why they're here. So all of those three things happening pretty much at the same time within about a month of each other moved me in this direction.
And I'm so glad they did. And so, how are your meditations uniquely designed for kids who are experiencing depression and anxiety?
We don't talk that much about depression or anxiety in the course of the meditations. We don't focus on that. Instead, I focus on looking beyond that, understanding that it exists and not ignoring it, but looking beyond it to find something good that a person can look at, person of any age can look at early in the day, and knowing that that will carry them through the day. I also made sure they're very short. These are not traditional meditations where there's a long, silent period of time or very slow, dry music. It's upbeat music. It's a short message. Most of these are less than 5 minutes. And we want to make sure that people have in mind that they can do what they need to do to move forward and get through the day.
Oh my gosh, I love these so much. These are the best part of my morning now, and sometimes, depending on what mood I'm in, they'll bring me to tears. But anyway, so I love the voice, your voice, the combination of the music and the motivational content. So, who's the musician again?
The musician is Scott Holmes. Scott performs all of the music that you hear as a background in these meditations. He performs all of the parts, all of the instruments, and he writes the music as well. Scott lives in northern Scotland, and I'm delighted that we were able to engage him in this and use his music. It's the same composer and musician, no matter what music you hear in the background.
Oh, that's remarkable. Well, thank you, Scott. We're grateful
Yes.
for him. Well, and you also bring some unique credentials. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I have worked as a host on NPR affiliate stations in a number of different locations for most of my career. And people throughout that career often told me that I have a very calming presence. So that's important when you're delivering the vocals for a meditation. I'm also a minister, and my focus in seminary was interfaith concepts and topics. That's an important thing to bring forward in these. It seems like a pretty natural combination for meditations. And of course, these meditations are available not only on the Cour Experience website, also on my website, and also in book form. It's called Drive Time Meditations. So we have all of that put together so that they're accessible.
Yeah. If I could just follow up on that, what is your website?
DonnaApidone.com.
Awesome. And I had another thing that you made me think of when you were talking, but I was, when you were still on the air on Cap Radio, I once heard someone promoting an event that you would be narrating. And she said, I would listen to Donna Apidone read the phone book. So lots of people enjoy your voice.
And thank you. And aren't we glad that we have better content than just a phone book?
Yes. And some people don't even know what a phone book is. So never mind.
What's a
You don't need to
phone
know.
Yes. Yeah, the kids don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're super excited to have these drive time meditations on our platform and as part of our core tools. And so every week when we do these podcasts, we're going to be introducing a piece of Donna's work, and then you can find these on our platform as well.
Okay. Well, before we end our show, let's listen to a little bit more of this week's featured meditation with Donna Apidone.
We see the load carried by those around us. We help them where and when we can, as they do for us. This is how we share the load. This is how we travel together.
Thanks for listening to the Warrior Parent Podcast. You can find us at courexperience.org. And remember, COUR is spelled C-O-U-R. In the next few episodes, we'll be talking about disability awareness and how we can show up, this generation of kids and what's going on with them. And we will approach the difficult but important topic of suicide and how we can talk about it and support each other. Make sure you join us for these important conversations.
Our meditation segment is produced by Donna Apidone with music from Scott Holmes. A full collection of meditations is in Donna's book, Drive Time Meditations, available on Amazon and at donnaapidone.com. We want to thank Samuel Hell, LLC, for sponsoring this podcast. We also want to thank our technical and marketing support from She Reigns Creative and Inspire Your Brand. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of the hosts, the producers, or the financial supporters. I'm Debbie DiManno.
And I'm Marci Mitchell. The Warrior Parent Podcast is a production of Cour Experience.